This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
Introduction. Ralph Patel was charged with the murder of Stephen Dale and was brought to trial. The victim was shot dead, and a .38 caliber bullet was ejected from the body during the autopsy. Patel faced the arrest 2 days after the shooting, and his house was searched as he was accused of murder. During the search, a dozen handguns, including 1 AK-47 and 3 rifles with sniper scopes, were found. However, none of the guns did match up with the bullet that was ejected from the body. In a pretrial motion, the defense has moved to exclude the evidence of the guns found in Dale's house based on its irrelevance to the case. The judge should decide on the admissibility of the evidence in this case. Issue. In the particular case under analysis, the issue that is presented to the court is the admissibility of the evidence. The confronting parties here are the defense, which represents the interests of Ralph Patel, accused of murder, and the judge, who is supposed to make a decision based on all the presented facts. The question of evidence's admissibility is problematic because none of the guns possessed by Patel did match the bullet, which was found in the victim's body. As Melear states in her article, if the weapon that was not used in the crime is introduced as evidence, the trial court must consider its relevancy either to the perpetration of the crime or to the credibility of a witness, and then weigh the probative value, if any, against the possibility of unfair prejudice to the defendant. Therefore, the admission of Patel's firearms to the evidence might serve as a prejudgment of the defendant. However, to solve the presented issue, one should dwell upon other cases related to the firearm case law, compare them to the problem under consideration, and then a conclusion could be made. Rule. As mentioned before, the essential law that is applied to such matters is the Second Amendment, which permits United States citizens to possess and carry arms. Additionally, another law that could be applied to the related case is the bad character rule, which is regulated by the Criminal Justice Act 2003. This law regulates the legitimacy of the evidence admission in situations when such admission will adversely influence the defendant or when it is needed to justify the defendant's reprehensive behavior. Thus, to put the analyzed problem into a proper context, one should touch upon the significant cases related to the Second Amendment since those cases' interpretation of the firearm law could be relevant to the briefed case. The admissibility of the bad character evidence will also be observed. The first case that should be considered is the District of Columbia v. Heller, in which the Supreme Court upheld that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia, and to use that arm for traditionally lawful purposes, such as self-defense within the home. Also, it was specially stated that the district's total ban on handgun possession in the home amounts to a prohibition on an entire class of arms that Americans overwhelmingly choose for the lawful purpose of self-defense. It means that, according to the court's decision, the handguns are not considered a criminal matter of possession. Moreover, they are mentioned as a means of lawful self-defense. 2 years later, in the case of McDonald v. Chicago, the Supreme Court mentioned Heller's case and ruled that a provision of the Bill of Rights that protects a right that is fundamental from an American perspective applies equally to the federal government and the states. This case was a turning point in the history of firearm law because it finally made the law applicable on the federal level. Accordingly, these two precedents provide evident testimony of the fact that handguns are legal to possess and keep at one's house unless the only aim of possession is self-defense. Also, in accordance with the bad character law, the evidence must be excluded if its admission causes an adverse effect on the proceeding. Generally, these facts provide a background for the analysis of the case. Analysis. The next step of briefing the case is its analysis on the grounds of the mentioned laws and precedents. Considering the accusation of Ralph Patel, it is evident that none of his weapons were used in the crime of which he is accused, and thus, the relevance of this evidence to the case is arguable. Also, considering previously mentioned cases, which were held in the Supreme Court, it is possible to observe that the defendant did not violate the law by keeping the handguns in his house. Particularly, in the case of McDonald versus Chicago, it was ruled the Supreme Court that the 14th Amendment makes the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms fully applicable to the states. Therefore, it is evident that Ralph Patel possessed the guns legally, which did not match with the bullet. However, another law that is related to the case is the bad character rule. There are several principal attributes of the inadmissibility of the bad character evidence, and all of them could be applied to the defendant. There is no record of Patel's committing an offense or engaging in other reprehensible behavior or misconduct. The guns are not relevant to the matter of substantial importance in the context of the case, and there is no mutual agreement between the parties about the admission. Therefore, applying the bad character rule to the case also reveals the inadmissibility of the evidence. Conclusion. With the analysis and comparison of different cases that were given in the previous section, it is possible to conclude. Since the bullet from the body of Stephen Dale is not connected in any terms with any weapon in possession of Ralph Patel, it is possible to observe that the admissibility of those handguns to the evidence is not relevant to the case. Furthermore, such admission could be treated as an attempt to aggravate the reputation of the defendant. Also, it is reasonable to notice that courts point to the prejudice due to the possibility of a propensity line of reasoning based on a defendant's gun ownership, and such possibility is relevant to the case under analysis. Therefore, the judge is advised to satisfy the defense's inquiry by excluding Ralph Patel's handguns from the evidence. Did you like this briefing the case using the IRAC method sample? To get more works like this one, make sure to check out the free database of academic paper examples at ivpanda.com. You will find thousands of samples for all your study needs, without even having to register.